So happy that we're here again to discuss and to have a conversation about women in the Bible. We have been studying and we have been having this conversation every Monday. We have looked at Eve, we have looked at Lot's wife, we have looked at Sarah, Hannah. And tonight we will be looking at Rachel and Leah. And as we look at what we have learned, the lessons we've learned, how similar we are to these women even in today's world, I pray that we will all have an experience from this conversation tonight. And so we go right into our topic, Rachel and Leah. So Rachel and Leah, they're actually sisters who happen to be married to the same man. Again, here we are having this situation of one, a barren woman. We seem to be talking about that a lot, right?
Yes, yes.
And we also have the situation of a polygamous home, multiple wives. And we know from our original study of Eve that that wasn't something that God designed, right?
Right.
God allowed it to happen. And we see where these men of God have been so involved and encouraged by their wives.
Yes, yes.
The wives were the one that initiated it. The husband never went to the wife to say, "Hey, give me your handmaid." It's mind-boggling that a woman, because I know I don't want to share my husband with anyone. I'm pretty sure you don't. You don't know you do.
Wouldn't want to.
Not by choice.
Not even with my sister.
Not by choice, but for a woman to willingly go to their husband and say, take my handmaid or maid, whatever term they used back then, is mind-boggling. It doesn't sit well with me as a woman.
Yeah, but it goes back to the purpose of why they're doing it.
Right.
It's more out of jealousy. I want to up this person and up that person. If you do this, I'm going to do this. If you buy the right car, I'm going to buy a right car. Mm-hmm. So I think it's not only that, but even how we learn about Jacob himself, remember he was running away from an issue that he caused.
Mm-hmm.
So the situation that he's in, he probably think, well, hey, I just stole my brother's birthright, maybe God said, here you go. But he's dealing with deceit after deceit. The first one caused by him and his mom, and then he comes in, fall in love instantly. Because they said when he kissed Rachel, he cried.
Yeah.
And
would you say that was love at first sight?
or infatuation at least. So it kind of goes into the beauty. How they describe her as beautiful, and how the comparison of beauty. This is the first place in the Bible you see the contrast of what a man is recognized as beauty versus
one who's not so.
Yeah.
I think the Bible.
What was the word that the Bible used for Leah?
Tender eyes.
Some translations say tender, some say weak. But the thing is, I have not been able, and I've been searching, I've not been able to find anybody who truly understood
what that meant.
Like that. Some people say maybe she had an eye problem. Some people say it could be that she was plain. But whatever the situation was, we knew that
Rachel was more beautiful. Yes.
Yes, than Leah. Yes.
Yes.
But I want to go back to when they met. It was at the well, and as I continued to read, I felt that he kissed her because it was a custom. They were related, and though people that are related, is what they do. They kiss each other because as I kept reading in the Bible, when he saw. Because at the well, remember, he introduced himself as his father, the relationship between them. The relationship between them. And remember that he had been doing a lot of traveling. He had been out on his own for a very long time. So I felt as though it was a kiss of I am so happy, one, to see you. Yes, he did love her immediately.
No.
But not of an attraction, you
I
don't
don't
think.
know.
Yeah, I thought it was a kiss of
That's
just two
crying.
family members
That's
seeing each
crying.
other for the first time.
But that crying after was what kind of tossed me, and I wondered. I asked the question. It never said he kissed Leah. It never said if it was a greeting of relatives. This is another cousin, like first.
Right.
That Laban and Rachel was like brother and sister. So this is your uncle.
Right.
Kiss.
Right.
Your cousin,
So
right.
did he kiss? Yeah, even
But
if
he and
kissed-
Laban, he did kiss Laban also when he saw
Yeah, but
him.
no record that he actually kissed Leah. Yeah, but I'm
True.
Leah.
And,
True.
So I'm a
and
little
even
bit-
though the custom was that you meet with the kids, but I was trying to find where else in the Bible you have that example
Interactive.
of a man kissing his relative. So that's what led me to think that it's a little more than that. Like he was like this, as I could say, infatuated, with her because she was really so beautiful. I mean, to the point where he saw her, and remember when he had to move the stone from the well?
Yeah.
Yes.
That they normally take 2, 3
He
men,
moved that
and
stone.
he did it all by himself.
He was showing
He was like
out.
a showman.
Yeah.
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 It could be a little more than just that.
I think so. Also, given the fact that when he asked for her in marriage, and it took 7 years, to him, the Bible said the 7 years was more like a few days.
Right. Yes.
So he would have to be really in love with her.
Because after a month, the
Yeah.
scripture told us that he really was in love with her.
So this is not the one that. So people will say, "Oh, I just love how she loved God." I'm like, the devil's a liar. You're attracted to the person at first, right? There's something physical.
Yeah.
It's
Yes.
not about, "Ooh, I love when you carry those books," or "Are you up there?" Yeah, I mean, it comes after. I'm like, that was so ridiculous. When people say, "Oh, I'm not really,"
The physical
no,
doesn't
there is,
matter.
this exemplified that there is a physical attraction between spouse
There is.
somehow, and this man cried. I did this grown man cry.
He cried and waited how many years?
7 years.
14.
Well, in total, what?
One of the things that came up to me in this, reading this, was that so Laban, because Jacob was running away, he ran away
Laban.
with nothing, right? He had nothing.
Yes. Nothing.
The custom in those days was that you had to have a word for the
Yes.
for the
Yes.
bride, and he had
Nothing.
But what struck me was that Laban said, "Here's something you got to do so that we can support my family."
Yes.
It struck me that as women, that's something we need to look at when we are getting married. Can this man
Provide.
provide for his
Yes.
family? Because that was the custom. He was ensuring that you will be able to provide, even though I didn't he never gave the money
Right,
over.
right.
But he was ensuring that there was going to be some provision for
Yes.
the family. And so Jacob knew the custom too, so that's why he agreed that he would work for 7 years, which was a long time. That was a lot of money. I'm sure he would have gotten for 7 years.
And Jacob was the reason that Laban became so wealthy because
It's because of
Jacob,
Jacob.
because of Jacob,
Yes.
because he just when it comes to working and keeping the sheep or whatever it is that he was doing, he did an excellent job. He had that attitude of he has a great work ethic. If we want to put it that way.
He wasn't a lazy person.
No,
No.
not at all. And he increased Laban's wealth.
Yes, he was a trickster.
Which goes back to what you said about the man being a provider.
Yeah.
He worked hard to support his family.
Yeah. And looking at that too, what I liked too was when, even though it said Rachel was a shepherd, most people were saying shepherd because she's a woman. But she was also put to work, which shows me that laziness on both parts is not godliness.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yes.
I don't know where it says in the Bible something about the sweat of their
Brown.
bread.
Yeah, but they never really. So this is my pullback. They never really, as much as they describe Rachel, her beauty, what she did, they never really go into depth what Leah contributed to that family.
Right.
She was just the older sister?
Right.
Was she just keeping up space? Was she, what was her talent? What was she at this time in her waiting period? What was she doing? And I haven't read anything that contributed to like what was she doing. We knew Rachel was out there with the field, where was she been, the house duty. I assume she was more shut off and wasn't exposed to anyone.
Yeah.
Who-
I think she was
You mean Leah?
Leah.
Okay.
Leah was mainly
Maybe
not
she was
beautiful
more.
because she
Yes.
was just beautiful as
Her sister.
Rachel,
Yeah, but so that's why I think Laban displayed Rachel.
He said he did.
Like in a way of like I have this beautiful. I wonder how many men passed through that area and wanted her hand in marriage and probably couldn't make it to the 7 years. But here come a man that not only did 7, you tricked me, I'm gonna do seven more.
All right.
In addition, I'm gonna do some more, until I could get my family out. But I felt like Laban was the source of trickery, just like
he
his
was.
sister.
He was.
Do you-
And I think, go ahead.
So do you think that he deliberately said 7 years because he didn't think Jacob could make it through those 7 years?
I think maybe there was past pursuers that couldn't make it there, or they probably make it to 4. Then look, it's not even work. But I can't. There's nothing in the Bible to
Right.
speculate what other
Why-
pursuers she
Right.
had.
And why 7 years
And why
also?
7?
I think Jacob had to work that time because he had no money.
He had
He
nothing.
nothing because he
Right.
had no way without
From what he
other
did.
people. But I think because of her looks, why maybe she was passed by other men, and so her father needed to get her married because to take away the shame from the family because if the younger person, the younger daughter got married, there would be a shame not only
Yes.
on Leah, but the family.
The family.
would be shamed. So he was just ready for the trickery. But it just says that unfair game played twice, because Jacob did it, and there he got it right back.
I think that's
Exactly.
why he probably never really complained.
Yeah.
Like he probably said, really God. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if this word is appropriate, but I some people say it could be karma. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some people say that. Yeah, it is. You sow what you reap.
Yeah.
You sow, that's what you're gonna reap, and so that's what happened. But 7 years, as David said, though, 7 years to him was like
A few
nothing.
days.
7 days went by, it was like nothing because he was so in love with her. But one of the things that got me was that he spent 7 years around her. I mean, they might not be in close contact, but they are in the same area. But it seems to me that he never really know what's about it. Because I'm still can't understand when he said, okay, I'm ready for my wife. And the father switched the bride. I still cannot understand how is it that he could not recognize that this is not
I said
Rachel.
that
Obviously, there were no conversation because if they had conversation, he probably would have picked up
It was
the
just
boy.
physical. I think it was just physical, or he loved the fact that she worked.
I think, we have to look at the customs of that day. And even though there was a whole lot of stuff going on with polygamy and other things that, God did not approve of, but one of the things that that I see during that time is that one, I'm surprised that he did kiss her at the well.
At the
I'm
well.
surprised because they just had this custom with the women.
Yeah.
They were very, very protective of the young women in the family, and for him to know, I really think he did not. I really feel that he did not know.
Yeah,
He did not
agree.
know. I think the tent was number one
Dark.
so dark that he couldn't see her face. Plus, she was veiled. And the veil they wore back then was just a little different than the veils that brides wear today. And somehow Laban was smart enough because, look at his back. Look, Laban was good at I call it foolery. You know, he was good at doing those kinds of things to trick you.
Yeah.
And so I think he had it so well planned that Jacob didn't know. I really believe he did not
I
know
agree with
that
you.
it
I
was
think
that
he
it was
didn't know, and
Leah.
I
He
just
didn't
didn't
know.
understand why he didn't know.
I can't
But the fact was that he did not know. He
Mm-mm.
was tricked,
understand.
and he had to spend another 7 years.
Now
But
that's love.
that
I
is
just
love.
That's the one that's difficult for me. That first that you were okay with working set the first 7,
Yeah.
and then to have to do it 7 more.
Yeah, but I
That's
think at
14
that
years.
point, that's where Leah would feel like, wow, I'm married to you, but you love my sister that much. You're going to slave for my dad for another 7 years
Yeah.
to really get her. So that's your true desire.
Yes.
But I even think back where how the Bible start with like this body image, and you think about today at women, everyone want to be the size 0, the size 2,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the eyes, the whole nine bag. But it kind of proved that God have women in just different shapes, size, form, and I think at a general purpose, what you learn or take from this story as it develops, that the first, all women are different, right?
Yes.
And to your point, Leah and Rachel might be somewhat similar in stature, or probably it's just really just the eyes that separate the 2.
Mm-hmm.
But for us as women, we're all going to take on different shape, different form. But that doesn't remove us from being used by God. Because as the story develops, you see how God used these respective women to build His nation, as He promised their forefather in Abraham and Sarah.
Right.
So.
Right.
And I'm glad that you went there, because God, the thing about us, we look at the outward. We, and not only men, we too, we get drawn into, the beautiful outward. But I'm so happy that God looks at the
Inside.
heart, the inside. And I think that in this situation, He did that with Leah. He saw that, because I think during the time that Jacob was there, that Leah was learning from him, because their home wasn't a God fearing home. They were idol worshiper, as we learned later that Rachel stole the idols from her dad. But Jacob was godly, and so he must have been, instilling some of his godliness, things about God there in the home. And so I think Rachel was leaning more towards that. And God saw that, in her. And the thing about God, He seems to go after those who are less fortunate or
The
cast
underdog.
off. Yes, And so He saw that Leah wasn't loved. And He saw that not only that she wasn't loved, but she wasn't complaining either. Even though she was hurting, I'm sure, because
I
to be rejected like that after that wedding night.
Not, but I mean, she was an afterthought.
She was.
So
But
I
she
can't
wasn't even a
imagine.
thought.
Right, I can't imagine you having your husband, knowing that your husband is not fully in love with you. He wants your sister, and for 7 years times 2,
Yeah.
14 now, where you're yearning to get the love of this man, and he's not, because you're
And she named her kids accordingly
Yeah.
to
what she
how
was
feeling.
Yes, what she was going through at that time.
I can't imagine the emotional turmoil it took.
Me either. There's I was trying to send just a copy of the page. A Christian woman who wrote a book, and it's called A Woman's True Desire. And she deals in the first chapter, she talks about Leah and Rachel and that relationship, and how she, in her own words, tried to describe how Leah must have felt to go through, to know. Just think about it. Now, maybe the first night, because Jacob thought that it was Rachel, she probably felt love just that one night, but she knew it wasn't for her.
But can you say, because do you think that she knew Rachel was promised to Jacob, and it should have been Rachel and not her that same night? So how do you think she felt at that moment to say, you're laying with me, but you prefer to be with my sister. Do you
I
think
think
she really felt
I
love?
think that it was better to do it that way than her to shame her family and herself not to be married at
Because she's the
whatever
only.
age
Yeah.
she
Went along with
was.
it. Yeah,
Yes,
Wow.
yeah, yeah. Because the Bible says that that kind of stuff brings shame on the family.
Mhm.
If the younger girl gets married before the older girl,
Mhm.
and but I just can't imagine 7 years of a man. I'm your wife, and you are yearning and
You're
loving
desiring
someone
another
else.
woman.
But
That's
that happens so often in our time that you are married to a man, but he's
Mine is that.
love is yeah desire for somebody else outside, and you have to live with it, and you wonder how do you live with? I always say I don't think I could live with that situation. I always say that, but then I think about Rachel. I always think about Leah now, and I'm like, she knew she wasn't loved. She was with this man. She got married to him first, even though it was by
Right.
trickery, but she was married to him first.
Bore children
But
for him
bore
first.
children for him first. But knowing through all of that,
Still wasn't
that
love.
he did not love. He
So-
loved somebody else on the help.
So it's the constant theme in our household is that you have to find your relationship with God. I felt in her lonely time it pushed her closer to God and what He desired of her, right? Because you would tell, because even in naming Judah,
mm-hmm.
right? She declared that and that's the linkage of the coming Messiah.
Mhm.
So God had a plan for her without her knowing
Knowing
his
that
plan.
he had a
But I
plan.
need you to get in line. I know you have a lot of issue going on, and I'm speaking to myself right now. But I need you to get in line so I can prepare you for the plan I have for you, right?
Could it be that God really wanted him to marry Leah because of the plans that he had?
I think that was like we each individual have a plan for our life. I feel like maybe not in that manner of tricking, and because God is not like let's trick or
Yeah,
play trick.
No.
But He
that's what I was gonna
knows
say.
He
I don't.
knew
I
this
don't
was
think
going to
so.
happen, and He said, "You know what? I'm going to send my son through this woman's linkage to show that she is in fact loved."
She is
His plan
loved. She's loved by.
manifested, though.
She's loved by God.
No, I just think about the fact that so often that God has a plan for us, but because our eyes are so fixed on the naked, we can't see the spirit on the natural
Mhm.
things. We can't see the spiritual
Yeah.
things, and so we're yearning after. He's
Yeah.
yearning after Rachel, like we yearning after something
Yeah,
that
yeah.
might not be what God
Yeah.
wants for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
But I'm yearning for that.
Yeah,
But God has a better, bigger plan for me,
Mhm.
but I can't
Right.
see that
No.
because
And-
this
and-
is what I want.
Mhm.
yeah,
Because a lot of times we interfere
That's
with
Yeah.
the plan that God
Sarah.
may have for us.
Sarah.
Exactly. Exactly. So we get in the way of our own.
Blessing.
Yes.
For its plan
exactly.
to manifest.
Exactly.
But in contrast with that, you have Rachel that knew she was loved,
Yeah.
right? But
But not
God,
happy.
yes,
And
Yes.
jealous and envious. of
yes,
one
and not
loved one.
once until she came into realization when her husband even said to you, "Don't come to me.
Yeah.
I already have some kids, so I know I'm good." Is talk to God
Yeah.
in essence, and until she developed that, because Joseph become that kid that saved his entire family,
Mhm.
right? Right. So I think if we stop looking, I think the physical that we look at doesn't defer us for what God's plans are for us
Right.
individually.
Right.
That's the lesson I learned from that, because Rachel was in, enmeshed in her own insecurities, and it didn't matter what her husband said to her. She had a plan of action in mind, and that plan of action was going to come to fruition. So I was thinking, Daisy, what are you currently going through in your life, or that you have gone through in your life, where your friends, loved ones, whomever came to you and said, Daisy, no, don't do it because of X, Y, and Z, and they try to bring you back to Christ, who you should have your eyes on at all times, but because of my own insecurities and me doing what I want to do, at that time I'm only a hearer of the word, not a doer.
Doer.
So
Yeah.
this lesson, I mean, it just showed me how important it is to remove self
Yeah, and it goes back to what Sister Legette said. You focusing on what Daisy desire, what you're trying to fix, block God from
Yes.
manifesting its plan for you.
Mhm.
Because eventually Rachel learned that look, this is not about me, it's not about Leah, it's not about our maids, it's not about Jacob, it's about me connected with the sovereign God
Mhm.
Mhm.
and knowing that He's sovereign.
Mhm.
And then once we get a hold that really this is God doing the driving and we're just the passenger, we just have to respect that piece and move forward.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think we have some individuals on Zoom who has joined us for the discussion, and we we will just let them in as soon as they want to join in for the discussion. But I'm just so happy that we are bringing the fact that Rachel was, even though she was loved, she was still unhappy.
Mhm.
Mhm.
But one of the things that I picked up from the story was that in her going through her unhappy stages because she wasn't able to bear a
Bear
Their
child,
children.
children.
that she was not going to the true God. I got the feeling that she was going to the idol that she, her dad,
Mhm.
that the tradition. And so she even went to her husband. When she went to her husband and he said, "You come to me, go to God." I think it wasn't until that point when he pointed her to
To God.
God,
Mhm.
which you said that sometimes, we the friends that we have, we want friends who would point us to God,
Mhm.
when we are in
Mhm.
situations. Because sometimes we are in situations and we are so focused on the situation that we forget that, listen, there's a God who is,
Mhm.
He's the one we need to go to. And it's always good to have somebody reminding us
Yes.
of that.
Yes.
And I was happy that it was her husband. He said, "Don't come to me. I'm not God. Go to God.
Mhm.
And so even though he was a trickster, even though he fell
He
into
did some
doing
wrong.
all of this, he still
He
remember that
pointed
there's a
her to the
God
Most
who
High.
could help in the situation.
Mhm.
So
So the next big lesson learned is that beauty doesn't mean you're free from difficulties.
That is
That's
so
true.
true.
Right? It doesn't
True.
mean that you won't come up on problems. Your marriage won't go through tests. Your relationship with God won't be tested. It's just you have this physical beauty, but what else is there, right? And I personally didn't think God per se cursed Leah, right, of making her the way it is. I think He, in His sovereignty, He wanted to put out lesson for us today so we could have this conversation and say, what can we take away from this situation, right? In a society that looks and how much money you have and who you're married to is so important. How is it what happened in the Bible?
Mhm.
How did I think that story represent not only beauty but how personal connection with God allow you to grow to in this plan for you. So I think that was one of the big things I know for me personally.
Let's touch on jealousy. How does the Lord feel about jealousy?
Well, if you're looking at the story,
Mhm.
they were both unhappy, Leah and
Yep.
Rachel, in their own way. One Leah, she had the children, she had sons, lots of them,
Yep.
but she was unhappy because she wasn't loved.
Mhm.
And Rachel was loved,
But was
but she was
unhappy.
unhappy because she didn't have children. So, the lesson that teaches me is that, we may have some of what we want, but if we don't have if the entire picture is not there,
Mhm.
loved children, God in your home, because it's obvious. How could God even reside in that home with so much turmoil going on?
God.
Even though Jacob knew God and had a relationship with him, still there was a lot of issues in his home.
I agree with you, but if when just rereading it, even listen to the scriptures, like the moment Leah had Judah,
Mm-hmm.
that was the meaning of Judah is I will praise God,
Mhm.
right?
So
I
we saw
think
the change.
at that moment she realized that pleasing God
Mm-hmm.
was more
Right.
important than getting
Mhm.
Jacob's attention.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at that point she was free of everything else that came after.
Mhm.
I think she made peace with the situation at hand, but
Mhm.
I love the fact the naming of her children. I never looked up. I understand where Christ came to Judah, but understanding the order of the children and when they were named and how they were named, it makes sense that at the point when she had Judah, she said, "You know what? I married this man. I gave him some son. I'm gonna just praise you, God, because I did what I'm supposed to do as a wife."
I hear that,
Go ahead.
but because she bargained with her sister after that. So I'm wondering if, it's true, then why would she go left and bargain with her
It's
sister?
like but they're human. We had to realize that even though we're talking about women of that time, I felt like they still have the hurt. They still feel pain. They still feel like, man, I'm doing something. But through it all, if you look at subsequent kids, she still continuously praised God. So you pulled me out that one time, so now you have me going back. I can only imagine her probably praying like Hannah and saying, I need to let this go to move forward. I need to understand that you're still my God, and you love me in spite of it, but also that you will forgive me. And I could, you have younger sibling that will taunt you. Like, it's so annoying. Like, your purpose is to make sure my life is. And now they're wife of the same man. I could only imagine.
And their sisters.
Yeah,
That
it's
had to
like
be,
What came out to me with that, what both of you are saying is that, so she was, based on the name, we know she started to have this relationship.
Mhm.
But it just tells me that, in our daily walk,
Mm-hmm.
and no matter how close we are to God, in our daily walk, the minute we take our eyes off, we
Off
will
of-
fall.
mhm.
Because when her sister said, I'm going to give you my maid, right?
Mhm.
She followed after.
Yes.
Even though,
Yes.
that wasn't God's way.
And it wasn't
of
called for
doing things.
because she already
And
had
she did, and
children.
she had children.
So there was
but
no
she got
need.
into this competition. So,
Mhm.
okay, so you give your maid, I can give my maid
Mhm.
too. You do this, then I can show you that I can do it
Mhm.
too. And so often we do that too. In our lives, somebody do something and we say, okay, I can do better than
I
you.
can do,
Yes,
yes.
and we go into this, and that sort of thing is what the devil wants to get at us, that we go into this competition instead of us, trying to help each other to love and uplift. We try now to get one step ahead of each other, and so I saw that, and I was like, she was right there with God. And then just by the names, as Esther said, just by the name she was using, naming her son, you knew that she had no decided that, okay, I guess I'll never have his love.
Right.
Because remember, each child she had, she said, okay, he's gonna love me now. And we find that happen in today's world too, that we find that women will get pregnant
And try to have a baby to keep
Just,
them in.
just to keep them, to keep them in.
and
Yes.
that was exactly what she was doing, trying to get her husband
To love her.
by having children, And then she reached to the point where she said, it's not going to happen. I'm just going to surrender to the Lord and just allow him
Because
to
Judah was
lead
what
her."
number? Number
He was
four.
But she had two more after that.
Oh,
Then a
okay.
girl.
And then a
That
girl.
three was all based on a relationship with God.
Yep,
that she
Right.
yep.
had.
I think she knew she messed up, and she said, "How do I allow?" When you are doing great, and then someone just come and just pick that sore, and like, "Oh, I was doing good for the past 2 weeks, and here you
Yes.
come and lift the scab off."
Mhm.
So I think at that point she slipped up.
Yeah.
She definitely slipped up because it goes back to the naming. You hear the naming of her kids after that too. It wasn't seeking Jacob love anymore. It was giving honor to God who gave her these sons. And out of her, six of the tribe, of Israel came.
Came,
So
yes.
so God wanted both of them to be mothers of Israel, but in different aspects. You look at beauty and not so beauty and the beautiful. Rachel learned later, so her kid, and even to me, she really didn't learn because when it's time to go, she packed up the idol god.
Yes,
Like so, like to me, I was like,
that's my
Yeah,
question.
I was a bit confused. I said,
yeah,
okay, where are you going with this, Rachel?
Exactly, and that's the question. Well, I don't want to jump ahead because it's just so much to
Yeah,
get
because you
before
brought up the what was the she asked her sister for the mandrake. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
she
when I was
also
reading that, I honestly didn't know what a mandrake was.
Mhm.
So I had to do my research.
Mhm.
And after I read it, I said, now, has she, here's my question. Has she had Joseph yet when that happened?
no,
Well, she had not had any children. I didn't think so.
Yes.
And when I looked at the meaning, it is a foliage. It's a, I don't know if it's a flower or just a plant.
Mhm.
But the plant helps, I think,
Fertility.
one with fertility.
and so
And
yes,
yes, and somehow, your
Yeah.
mood, you become, I guess, a little
Yeah.
sexy.
yeah.
And I guess she was just trying everything she could to have this child.
But look at the exchange. Rachel said to her sister, "You can go lay with my husband in exchange for this mandrake." And Leah went and laid up with him and had
Well,
3
that's how
kids
desperate
after.
she wanted to.
Yeah.
She was
But the thing is that as Rachel as a mother bothered me because then she turned against the kid. One thing I dislike is that if adults have disagreement, they take it out on the kids, right? And as I read more, I cannot believe this woman that wants to be a mother so much
Mhm.
didn't get what she wants, and now you're telling my son is out. Like to me, it should be our eyes was on the wrong prize. Even in that moment, even in that, and I think God was talking to her, but to the point you guys made earlier. So often we're not hearing that because we're trying to figure out a
We're
maneuver
doing our
way to
own
get
stuff. We want to get our
to get
own.
to that.
Yeah,
And I think what's applicable today, that we still do that. We still try to figure out, is this really God's plan for me? Sometimes it's clear. When I first was saved, I used to say, God, thunder and lightning, and I live in Florida, so every 2 seconds, like there was a lightning storm or something. Okay, I got it. I need to stay in the lab and study or something. But God come in subtle way. It might be a message that I was thinking about you, praying for you. God's about to deliver you, right?
Mhm.
And it's not to imply that you take it up your hands to get that delivery. You wait patiently and still connect to God. So I think the message out of jealousy never wins, right?
No,
But God
there's
can
no
use any
victory in jealousy.
situation
any situation.
to get the victory. And it wasn't until, and even in that short period that she was converted, Rachel, she had a son, and she still decided to go back and grab something that she felt connected to. So,
So then, would you say? Some people say you have. What is it? She was lukewarm at that time. Would you say
yes,
she was
yes,
lukewarm?
yes,
Okay.
yes, yeah.
But I think that they did something that we all try to do so often. They were trying to to fix things themselves.
Yes.
And she and so often it's not until we reach a point where we really get into a rut where we go to everybody else and the problem is not fixed before we remember that. You know what?
Let's turn to God.
Let's turn to God.
Let's see what the big guy has to
Yeah.
say.
And so I see the same thing happening with these ladies. And it's a lesson for us that it never worked out. It
And
always makes
sometime when we are trying to fix it, God is just sitting back and I'm like, I'm gonna wait till Tasha decides to say, God, no, I'm gonna try you. And it wasn't until we acknowledge that God is who He is, and I'm allow you to use me, that blessing will come. Because I just imagine him like, all right, I'm gonna sit back. All right, she gonna make that decision. Oh, poor baby, and just
Sure,
I
until
always say that I could just picture him sitting and shaking.
I cannot
Not
believe.
again.
Yeah.
I say it all the time. I'm like, God, I
Not
know
again.
you're just shaking your head and say, there she goes again. But this story, though, to me, speaks about God's grace and His mercy.
Yes.
Because in the midst of and Sister Legette, you said, in the midst of this family, with this dysfunctional family,
Mm-hmm.
he was still there. So it tells me that we can't write off anybody or
No.
anything. You know, we can't
Absolutely.
because we don't know what God is doing on the
Absolutely.
inside. You
Yep.
know, and God was obviously working on the inside, the hearts of these women, you know. He was working and we can see the gradual step. And sometimes we too get so discouraged when we have a loved one who you're witnessing to, or even a child who you're trying to encourage to be on the right road, and they bent on not, you know, doing, and we get
Discouraged.
discouraged, and you know, we lose hope.
Throw in
He
the
just tells
towel.
me that we can't, because God doesn't give up on anybody.
And it's not our timing.
And
It's
right,
not
you
our
know,
timing.
we don't know what's happening on the inside. And sometimes just at the point when we are ready to
The
give up
breakthrough.
is where the breakthrough is
Mhm.
coming, you know.
Yeah.
And so
But it also says, looking at this story and some of the stories that we've discussed before, God is long suffering.
Yeah.
He's patient.
he is.
He is,
Yeah.
because just looking at this story and all the mistakes that they made, yet God still
Yes.
So
loved them.
the thing that so that's one of the points I have here. Unlike those days, I don't think that Rachel and Leah knew what Rebecca did, right? Or knew what Sarah did, or have the Bible to kind of guide them of story of these women. We have it today, right? So we have the
But they
It's
knew.
passed down.
right,
Yeah.
but for us,
It's
we
passed
have
down.
it
By
in
word.
how it ended, how the result is, and yet still we still
We-
make our own
we-
decision
Right.
over and over. And it's this every aspect of what we go through: jealousy, bitterness, anger.
Every
frust-
woman can identify.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Every woman can identify.
Except for taking my handmaiden.
Yes.
Can't identify with that one.
Well, you do have some out here that can identify with
Yeah,
that.
some
Yeah.
do that. You
Yeah.
know, some do that because in these modern times we hear about sharing marriage sharing, and all
On
sorts of
TV.
things.
Yeah,
You
well,
know, those things
And you have
happen.
people, swingers, whatever. I mean,
Yeah,
you
you
have
know,
people
so-
out there doing
Oh,
that.
and the TV show Sister Wives.
Yeah.
It's so it is happening.
So that is why Solomon said there's nothing
New
new
under the sun.
Yeah.
You're right about that.
Because if you look at the same things that we see in this story, we see it happening
It's happening.
Today.
We ourselves are involved in some of the
Yes,
things,
Lord.
the jealousy,
True.
you know, and sometimes we don't want to admit it, but sometimes it's there, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and deceit to God. And sometimes really we do some stuff that we know we shouldn't do,
And that's
you know?
why I think God is up there, like, and I could just imagine Jesus at his right hand said, "Oh Lord, my friend Tasha, she owed you. Oh God, here she goes again." I literally, that's what I go through. I was like, Jesus, don't give up. Keep on poking God. Let him know I'm gonna listen. And it's just we have the story. We see how it ends. We see the lesson we're learning, but we
We still
still
do wrong.
Yeah.
We
we
still
still do
err.
it.
Do it.
Still do it.
So it says we can't be too hard on Rachel and Leah.
We
But
can't.
I'm Team Leah though. Since
I know
day
you
one,
are. I
I've
know
done
you
them.
are. And I've always been Team Rachel.
Yeah,
But I'm starting to lean
because
because
it's just something about being the underdog and how
Underdog,
God
yeah.
said, even in your imperfectness that people can see, I still have a plan for you.
But
Yeah.
then again, it looked like with the, because after I go through all this and listen to everybody, I'm like, but really, who's the underdog?
I think Leah still. I think Leah because she for the
You think
longest.
so at the end?
I think she not at the end,
Oh,
at the beginning.
At the end, she was
Yeah.
not the underdog.
Oh, yeah, she
I don't
did.
think there's a victor in this story.
Yeah.
I really don't.
But
She really came out because she ended up
Very
everywhere.
next to yeah.
She ended up fix up her kids, make up the 12 tribes
Yeah.
of Israel. Her lineage was where Jesus came through. So
But look at the relationship, because to me, this story is honing on the importance not only of your relationship with Christ, but our relationship with each other.
yeah.
And look at the sisterly relationship. It wasn't good.
And I think sometimes parents we do that. You know, sometimes parents will say, "This is my favorite child." you're the good child, or this is
So they've been probably perpetuated.
yeah. I think that's. But I was biased. I must say I was biased. I could just imagine him saying, "This is my pretty daughter. Let's get and this is the other one. I have one more. It's just
I thought kind of like the saving grace was Rachel died before Leah.
Yeah.
So at some point, she
died
really
in
did not
childbirth.
know that her husband really, at some point, he really started to love Leah. So she died, I would assume, thinking that she was, yes, she was the favorite. And eventually he learned he loved Leah. Leah was buried, right next to him. Where Rachel,
She died in childbirth.
right up the side of the street.
right? I didn't want to say that, but exactly. Yeah.
The way they depict it, I imagine it's probably right. They said on the way to
On the way to
Can you imagine all that turmoil, and in the end, your sister was the one to help raise
your
your children?
But God is so sovereign because Rachel, I don't see if it was flipped, Rachel will show favoritism to her kids. I felt like I felt like she would have not see it holistically and see this is all our kids. She would have said, well, let me just take Joseph and Benjamin, and those are my two. Not even the ones from her handmaid. I think she would have given as much love as those two.
I think there was some tenderness
About Leah.
Leah, yeah. She the way she carried herself through the whole thing, she was the one complaining.
she had to endure.
And she wanted love, so she showed love.
And I think though she went to God with her problem, and as a result, she started to trust him more, and so the relationship developed. That's when the name started to show how she was feeling in a relationship with God. And it just tells me that, we sometimes we get discouraged within ourselves that, we seem to can't move from where we at in our relationship with God. Because every time we do things that we shouldn't do, and so we feel like we're not. But, we just need to keep holding on to God because He is faithful and He promised us that, He'll always be there with us. And so if we continue to hold, I think the more we learn and study about it, is the closer we get in our relationship. And things will start shedding, And things will start shedding as we get closer. So don't get concerned because people around us who might say, oh, they go to church every Sabbath and look what they're doing. Don't mind that. Just continue to keep your eyes focused on Christ, because He is the one who's working on us.
But for me, it also says that if you are in a relationship with someone, your husband, for instance, you can't put all your eggs in one basket. You can't love your husband more than you love God. You can't yearn because we're all human. And we're not going to give half of what God would give us. And so the lesson learned for me is that I have to depend totally on God. Not saying I'm not going to depend on my husband, but yes. In because there are a lot of women, and this is a mistake a lot of women make. We yearn so for the love of our husbands or whomever's in your life, and they can't give you kind of love that God has done.
So in addition to that, I think one of the beauty, and if you go back to Hannah's relationship with the other wife, you're dealing with two wives. If as women we encourage each other more and say, hey, we didn't choose to be in this situation, right? Let's start encouraging each other. Well, the story went differently, whereas, all right, I know he's your husband, he's my husband, and I took it as the fact that not only do we serve God foremost, but relationship is also key with God. How you deal with your sister is important to how he views you. So if I am not supportive or encouraging in the things of God, so that that God plans for Daisy comes to full fruition, I'm responsible for that. My job is not to say, "Oh, I see it," but not to explain that God has something in you. Just keep on pressing forward. I think a big message is relationship and how we deal with each other as women. I say so often we're more so the Leah and Rachel, where we're all right. Here go my red car. Here go my black one. Here go this one. Instead of like, oh, I got this jeans that so and so. I know you wanted one. Guess what? Ta-da! I got you one too. We start like I know she likes it, so I'm gonna wear it so she can see it. But I ain't gonna tell her I got it for a great deal. So from that, I think relationship is key for God, and that's how we deal with our sisters.
Yeah, and I agree, and I think that how the marriage started with this mess is not how God intended it to be. And I wrote in my notes, when faced with struggles, it's not the time to become impatient, self-centered, or self-centered, because when self creeps in, we impulsively do things seeking temporary relief. So God's timing is not our timing, and when we feel there's a conflict, we still have to trust His heart. We must trust and obey God, and this is what I got from this lesson: trust and obey Christ.
And if you can't see His hand,
Trust His heart.
trust His heart.
Yes.
My favorite, one of my favorite songs.
Trust His heart.
So we have to learn, and we actually are at the end of another wonderful conversation. And I know that have been blessed by this conversation. It was, to me, it was like, oh, one of those tough ones. And I'm like, oh, what am I going to learn? But I've learned so much from Rachel and Leah's story. That tells me that I am so similar.
Yes,
You know,
very.
even as Tasha said, we know the story, we know it ended, and yet we make the same mistakes, and it just tells me that God is such a loving and faithful and tender and patient, and you name it. We could go on all night, saying how good God
Good He
is and how merciful He is to us, today in our life, because our stories are similar to His story. So again, we want to say thank you for tuning in with us,
Yes, thank you.
and we hope that you will subscribe. And if you like what you're hearing, that you give us a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Tell them what's happening, and we just hope that we will be truly, no, not only hope, I know that we will be truly blessed as we study these women. Next Monday, we will be looking at Zipporah, and that's Moses' wife. So I'm encouraging you to study up about Zipporah and come and join our conversation next Monday, 7 p.m. Thank you. Good night.